Greetings and welcome back to Couch Critic with me, Dennis P. I know it's been a while, but I decided to take this time to start to break down and analyze some of the players that Chelsea are looking to bring into the club. Firstly, we're going to be looking at Liam Delap, and I know there's been a lot of videos out there about his ability, the work that he's done at Ipswich, and I'm not going to try and focus too heavily on the stuff that has already been covered. You know, obviously his link-up play, hold-up play, you know, the fact that he's a bully, you know, all of that stuff. I'm going to try and look at some of the things that I think Chelsea could utilize in their setup. But before I get too far, please do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. But yeah, Liam Delap comes to Chelsea from Ipswich Town for £30 million. And that's the first thing that stands out for me. The fact that Chelsea were able to get a young English striker for £30 million, obviously taking advantage of the release clause or the relegation clause in his contract, where Ipswich goes down and the price to move him goes down to 30 million. And for a guy that's already proven that he can play in the Premier League, score 12 goals for a team that hasn't really or doesn't really create a whole lot of opportunities, they don't really produce a lot of big chances. So what do you get from Liam Delap? Obviously you get a guy that's very, very adept at holding up the ball, a guy that loves to go 1v1, is very good at taking on defenders, loves to run at defenders. This is what we've seen from him at Ipswich Town, but I think that ultimately his game is much more expansive than that, and it's evidenced by the fact that he's come from the Man City Academy. And if you're playing that Man City team, you have to be able to do a lot more than just hold up the ball and take on defenders as a striker. You have to be able to come into the midfield, you have to be able to link up play, you have to be able to have excellent technique, obviously, and you have to be able to obviously be clinical and efficient with your touches. Now obviously we haven't seen a lot of that on display at Ipswich Town, but if Enzo Maresca and Joe Shields are interested in a player like Liam Delap, it's mainly because of the work that they did with him in the Man City Academy. Now I'm sure you all know the structure at Man City is set up as such. The first team plays the same style of football as the U21s. The U21s play the same style of football as the youth teams. And with Pep Guardiola having been there for as long as he has, you would know that his philosophy, his way of playing football would be entrenched throughout the structure of that club. And that is, of course, a high brand of football, highly technical, highly tactically advanced, and not to mention high intensity. So if Liam Delap has come up in that system, you would know that he knows how to play the style of football that Chelsea would be asking of him in the Enzo Maresca setup, where of course he has to be tactically astute, knowing when to make the runs, knowing what action produces a reaction. Now if we were to take the work that he did at Ipswich Town into account, where he was very successful at take-ons, very successful at drawing fouls, very successful at, you know, carrying the ball into the final third. I'm talking in the top 93 percentile of all forwards in, you know, in the top 5 leagues. And then we also take into account the work that we assume that he was doing under Enzo Maresca at Man City, where he was very technically sound and tactically astute, like making runs off the ball, you know, spinning in behind, all the stuff that we need our strikers to do, holding up the ball, linking up play. Then you can probably surmise that if all things go well and this transfer goes well, that Chelsea have the makings of a complete striker, especially when you can take consideration this guy's shot mechanics. Because for me, this is one of the things that I think are the most valuable things that you can have in a striker, somebody who has impeccable shooting mechanics. And when you look at Liam Delap, that's exactly what you have, a guy that has done this hundreds and hundreds of times before, whether it's his left foot or his right foot, he always has the mechanics spot on. And with that said, I would expect a striker who has the shot mechanics like him to be hitting the target more than 44% of his attempts on goal. And for whatever reason, he hasn't really been able to do that efficiently. And you would hope that with time, you know, with more opportunities created for him, obviously Ipswich Town do not create a lot of opportunities, and most of his opportunities on goal are fashioned by himself, where he's taking on the man running for 40-50 yards before he's actually firing off a shot. The eye test does not fail me. Like, I really think that this guy, if you give him the opportunities, he's going to put it on target because he's so sound in terms of his mechanics. Now, how that translates to playing in a possession-based team where we're going to be facing low blocks, where he has to be able to carve out space for himself and, you know, basically get a shot off quickly. That's exactly where that benefit comes in. Because his mechanics are so good, he'll be able to shift defenders a little bit, and he'll be able to create space for the shot because he's able to produce those repetitions over and over again where he's shifting and hitting and not losing any of his body shape in order to strike the ball. So I'm hoping that what we see from Liam Delap in this Chelsea setup is more opportunities to get shots off. Doesn't take a lot of shots on goal, to be honest, just given the nature of the football they're playing at Ipswich Town. He'll get more shot opportunities at Chelsea, and using his shot mechanics, he might be able to get a few more on target and thus get more goals added to his total. Because if all he did was run at defenses and hold up play and take ons and fire off a shot, and he's able to score 12 goals in the Premier League on limited shots, obviously very efficient. I'm assuming that when he comes into this Chelsea side where opportunities fall plentiful to strikers like Nicholas Jackson and whatnot, you would expect him to increase his number of goal tally to upwards at least in the high teens, I would say, for sure, just based on the opportunities we create, and maybe even an outside chance at 20 if he's having a really, really good season. But based on what I see right now, his ball striking, his shot mechanics, and his movement in the box, which is the next thing we're going to be talking about, I think that we might have somebody who can get upwards of like 16, 17, 18 goals, and then if he's having a really good season, 20 plus. Now, one of the things that I've noticed in all of his movements and goals in the Ipswich setup was his propensity for going near post and finishing near post a lot of the times as well. And I think that that's something that Chelsea could use mightily in their setup as well. How many times did we see low crosses go in near post and nobody really attack it effectively? I'm talking about like Jackson, whoever else was in there. It just didn't seem like we have anyone really attacking near post with any real verve. We have somebody that can attack the back post, as obviously Cucurella is actually really good at attacking the back post, and we have the box crashers of Cole Palmer and Enzo Fernandez, but we just didn't have somebody that can really attack it near post. And when I look at Liam Delap and the runs that he makes near post and the finishes, I feel like we have somebody that can certainly add something to our attacking potency with his ability to get into those areas and finish there. Now, obviously, if you have a guy that's attacking near post and it has caught the attention of the defenses, it opens up things in behind. Like, obviously, it opens up space now for Cole Palmer and Enzo Fernandez to box crash and open up space for them to let off a shot, because defenders are so cognizant of the fact that Liam Delap runs near post and finishes there quite often. And then when you also take into account that you have Cucurella back post, that's when you start stretching open spaces in that box, because you have to account for the back post, you have to account for the near post, and you have runners coming in the middle. That's when you start opening up gaps of space to exploit. So the likes of Liam Delap running near post and finishing there, both left foot, right foot, is something that we can certainly use in our setup. And I'm hoping that this is something that Enzo Maresca recognizes as well and utilizes when we're looking to get 4s and 5s into the box, because he's obviously very adept at getting there and obviously very adept at finishing there as well. Now, I wouldn't say that this is a can't miss transfer by Chelsea. There's still some things that we have to consider, and of course, one of them being like the aerial threat that he presents. I don't really think that he has the ability to really threaten teams aerially at this point in his career. He is very combative, and of course he gets up, and he had to be the release in that Ipswich setup, trying to get the flick-ons and trying to just bring other people into play by holding it up, flicking it on. But I just haven't seen a lot aerially that would lead me to suggest that this guy is at the stage of a complete forward, a guy that can give you something left, right, header, build up, hold up play. He's not quite there yet as far as his aerial ability goes, but he's a willing combatant, and as a guy that, if under the right tutelage, might be able to give you, 3-4 goals aerially and then be defensively sound for you. But at this point in time, that is the one piece of his game that I'm not really quite sure about. But I think that because he's such a combative center forward, a guy that loves to get in amongst it, that'll only improve once he gets used to the body contact of the Premier League, and once he gets used to a more physical brand of football. He's only really his first year in the Premier League, so you can't expect him to be Didier Drogba in his first season. But over time, you would hope that as he gets used to the contact, his technique and his ability comes to the fore, and he's able to, put a few more on target and maybe put more in the back of the net. But even if it's a failure there, I still think that we have a striker in Liam Delap that can give us things that we can utilize, especially for the price of $30 million. And let's just be real, if he fails and he doesn't really meet the objectives of the transfer, then he's off to Strasbourg, and you guys can just delete this video. It'll be the end of it, right? But for the price point and the package that we have right now, what we're seeing from this guy, whether it be tactical with the Man City setup, and of course technically with Man City, and then of course the attributes that we saw on display at Ipswich Town, hold up play, take-ons, the ability to draw fouls, all of this stuff. I think that we have a striker, ball striking ability, one that I do not want people to sleep on. His ball striking ability and his technique is incredible. I do think that we have the makings of a striker who may not be able to light the stage on the European competitions, like I'm talking about a Wednesday night Champions League striker, but certainly a guy that can give you decent minutes in the Premier League as you look to challenge at some point in the very near future.